Hello everyone. I've got a nice low tide here. I'm out at the beach doing a little seaweed collection for our urchins that we have at the Marine Life Center in downtown Gig Harbor. And while I was out and about during this low tide, I thought I would go live and show you what there is to see out here. We love to do these live streams whenever we can, but of course we need a bit of a low tide in order to have something to show you. Today's low is only about a 0 foot tide. It's about an average for all the low tides, and it's already coming back in. So low tide was about an hour ago. So the tidal current you can kind of see as it's flowing past me here, bringing the tide waters back, and it's going to go all the way up and cover this entire beach here. So we'll just see what kind of creatures we can come across. Oh, hey, look at this. We've got a lovely leather star. Leather stars are by far the most common sea star that we find at this location, although we will find mottled stars and ochre sea stars as well. They're called leather stars because of their leathery texture. They don't have the same sort of ossicles, that bony protrusions that come through the skin of other sea stars. The leather stars are smooth all over. So fun to see. If you're just joining us and you want to post in the comments where you're watching from and maybe what the weather's like where you are, I'd love to know that information. We're just kind of getting into finally some warmish spring weather. It's probably about 60 degrees right now, degrees Fahrenheit. Our water temperature though is not going to change very much between winter and summer, so it's probably also about 50 degrees. Our water temperature here in the Salish Sea varies from about 45 degrees to 55 degrees or so. Love to see this. Lots of the seaweed is sort of emerging from the spores that were laid down the previous season, and we've got tons and tons and tons of seaweed here, which is all great. This is all going to be food for the summer's intertidal creatures that are also kind of joining this area. Well, some of them go into deeper water to kind of hibernate out the winter months. Others hug close to shore. And so we see a good variety of animals both in the winter and the summer. I don't know if my camera will pick it up, but there's a ton of plankton in the water right now. Can you see those little zoomy guys? Here, I can kind of try to get close and show you all the little bugs and things that are swirling around through the water. This is gonna be great food for lots of tiny larval fishes and other plankton eaters like the anemones that we have here, the barnacles. They're gonna be consuming this plankton too. There's two kinds of plankton, animal plankton and plant plankton. The animal plankton's real easy to see. The plant plankton is less so, usually smaller. I've got my net with me today, and I'm actually going to capture some of this plankton so that I can feed it off to the fishes in our Marine Life Center. So bear with me for a second while I just took a few scoops of this water. Of course, I'm barely putting a dent in the population of what's here. We'll just put this in a bucket. Right now, I've just got a bunch of seaweed, mostly this sargassum weed, which is a non-native species, so nobody cares if I take it. It's what we would consider non-native, but it's not necessarily invasive. Other animals from this habitat do eat it and grow on it and utilize it as they would any of the other natural algae. It's just not from around here. Some beautiful red and green algae out as well. There's just so much life here in this whole area. It is lovely to see. Let me go show you some cool creatures. A lot of the animals tend to be clustered around the structure. So we'll go over by the bridge and I can show you some of the cool things that are found there. Thank you to everybody who is liking and sharing and commenting, playing with that algorithm, letting this app know that this is a valuable live stream. Thanks everybody. If you want to follow along, we do these adventures as often as we can. And we post regularly too. Especially, please go like our Learn on TikTok contest. I'm trying to bring in a little revenue that way. We are a nonprofit, so any donations you make through the app or in person, or even just supporting us with your clicks and engagement is great. Our mission is to inspire stewardship for the Salish Sea, and we do that by creating learning opportunities. So welcome everybody. Oh, hey, look at this. This is super cool. This right here is an egg cluster from a nudibranch. This is from a type of sea slug, and my guess is shaggy mouse, just going from the size of it. It's about the size of a $50, and it looks like a gelatinous coil, and that is really characteristic of those shaggy mouse nudibranchs. I saw one earlier today. Maybe we can find another. But let's get over to the bridge. Of course, I'm moving very carefully through this water, making sure that I'm not stepping on any creatures. I got my extra toughs on today, which is the perfect beach shoe because they're rather soft-soled, but they give you enough traction on things like barnacles. They're waterproof unless you flood your boots like I'm prone to doing. This is a really cool seaweed right here. This one is called acid kelp, and there's two different forms of it. There's this thin form, and then there's the ligulata that forms this kind of big straps, and it has sulfuric acid that it releases when it's consumed by a predator. So it deters predators that way. It also deters other seaweeds from growing over top of it. It doesn't have the floats. Yeah, here's some acid kelp. It's a more broad form, and there's way more over here. Look at all this acid kelp. Wow. Both the stringy acid kelp and the flattened acid kelp living here together amongst a bunch of red algae, and then the green. The green is going to be ulva. This is ulva lactuca if it's growing in the sheets. Ulva linza if it's kind of a ribbony curl like these ones here are ulva linza. And then the little hollow tubes are going to be ulva intestinalis. Isn't that just a great name? It's named for its intestine-like shape. So let's go check out what life we can find. We've got a kelp crab right off the bat, and not just one, but many, many, many kelp crabs. These are northern kelp crabs. They get called spider crabs because of their really spidery shape. But there are plenty of crabs that are spider shaped that aren't necessarily spider crabs. So these are northern kelp crabs. Pugetia producta is their scientific name. Producta because they're able to have babies all year round. Unlike a lot of the cancer crabs like this red rock crab over there. They have to mate when the females are in their soft-shelled state. But for these northern kelp crabs, they're almost always able of having babies. And wow, look at all the plankton in the water. You can see the shadows of the plankton easier than you can see the plankton itself, which is just so cool. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in, who's like a longtime watcher. We appreciate you. We've been on TikTok since 2020, and I've done many a live stream, and it's one of my most favorite things to do. I love it. So you guys make it more fun. Granted, I would be out here probably talking to myself, even if I wasn't on TikTok, but you know, it makes me feel a little less crazy, I suppose, to be out here. But yeah, there's me. Hi. My shadow. My name is Rachel. I'm the education director for Harbor Wild Watch, and I have the best job in the world, and it's pretty easy. All I do is make people fall in love with this place, and it is not hard to do. There's so much life, and it's often really exquisitely beautiful. It's a really, really fun job for me. Down here in the rocks, where this is the foundation of the bridge, so all of these hard rocks here act as great habitat for animals to hide and get in and underneath. So we've got a lot of different creatures that favor this habitat. I'm going to try to show you. I was over here earlier doing a little bit of filming and found a very cool breeding aggregation of snails. To watch what I say on TikTok. Here we go. Here's our snorgy. Is that a good word for it? Here we go. So here we have hundreds of snails. and they are laying these eggs. So the eggs are kind of bright yellow right now when they're freshly laid, and then as they mature, they'll kind of turn brown or pinkish, which is just so cool. Sorry, I'm trying to take, it really doesn't like when I lean down into the rocks. My service drops off, so. Oh, hey, here's a really cool thing. This snail right here is different than those ones that are laying eggs. This is called a leafy hornmouth snail, and leafy hornmouths are predators. They're going to be eating things like barnacles, and this one is perfectly showing off the adaptation to do that. You see that little tooth kind of protruding down on the animal's left side on our right as we're looking at it? That little tooth is used to pry into barnacle shells and open them up and eat them. So cool. Love to see that. A lot of other things that we're seeing here. I'm gonna go that way. So forgive me a moment while I carefully pick my way across. These rocks are very unsteady and slippery. They're covered with diatoms and other seaweed. This makes it really hard to walk. But I can show you these sea cucumbers. These are called orange sea cucumbers, which is a great name for them because they are orange. They come in 2 colors. Let me get a little closer. Try not to fall. Ooh, okay. They come in 2 colors. One is like a hot fluorescent, flaming hot Cheeto orange, and then the other is kind of more maroon. So this is the darker orange, and there's the bright orange. It's so orange, my phone camera has a really hard time capturing it. It's just so stunning. But they have these feeding tentacles that'll extend outward to grab plankton from the water. And there's so much plankton here, you can see why there's so many of these cool sea cucumbers. When the tide is out though, they're gonna look like this. They're gonna be kind of look like weird little hot dogs. They pull their feeding tentacles in and they just sort of wait it out while the tide is gone. They have suction cups in 5 rows around their body, and they're able to hold onto the rock in kind of all directions because of that. And so they usually are found in pretty current-driven places where there's rocks to kind of surround themselves in. There are other sea cucumbers that favor more sandy habitats, but these ones really like sturdy structure and good flow. I'm gonna try turning off this background noise. We'll see if you can hear me better now, maybe. It's a bit noisy where we are because this is a well-traveled area. There's a bridge here with some car traffic. Let me know if that's better in the comments. It is so gorgeous out here. I'm just supposed to be grabbing a little bit of seaweed and heading back to the office to finish emails, but I find myself not wanting to go back because it's so gorgeous. It doesn't get much better than this, although the mountain is not quite out today. She's hiding behind the clouds right over there. So imagine, where my finger is would be Mount Tahoma or Mount Rainier. Just a gorgeous spot in the world. Taking a look at more of these spider crabs. There's so many of them here, and they are so well adapted to living life here in the intertidal zone. And they get big. I mean, look how big. It's hard to tell how large these animals are. But the males are going to have huge pinchers, and when they reach sexual maturity, they're going to be bright red, especially on their undersides. So you can kind of see the redness on this male here. Oh, he's regrowing a limb. His little kind of pinky leg towards the back is a regrown limb. It's smaller than the other side, and that is a great adaptation that crabs have. Although it's not instantaneous. It takes a while to regrow that limb because they can only add to their body size when they molt. So their outer shell, their hard carapace, is going to be kind of containing them fully, and when they lose a limb, it will sort of seal off that joint, and then a tiny little limb bud forms behind that. And then when they molt, they'll shed their outer skin, and they'll be soft and squishy for a minute, and they will then kind of inflate that arm that's being replaced. And so for the first molt, it's pretty small, and then the second molt, it's a little bit bigger, and then hopefully by the third or fourth molt, they're back to their full size. Wow, there's just so much to see. There is a red rock crab that is no longer with us. But there is not a whole lot of waste that happens out here in the intertidal zone especially. There's always a mouth to feed. Calories are calories. These animals aren't picky, so we have this mottled sea star that's taking advantage and eating this crab. So the mottled star is one of our larger sea stars. Them and the ochre stars are kind of the biggest. Oh, there's an ochre star over there. I'll talk about it in a second because wait, there is a nudibranch right here cruising along on the surface of the water tension. So this is a shaggy mouse nudibranch, this little kind of whitish slug. It's kind of crazy to see it just floating along like this. Nudibranchs are so small and delicate that they're able to basically crawl on the top surface of the water. These slugs, these nudibranchs are able to eat anemones, and here's what they're eating. These anemones here are aggregating anemones, and they are able to take the stinging cells from the anemone and then incorporate them onto their own serrata along their back. You can't see it because it's upside down right now, but on the top surface of this slug is going to be what looks like anemone tentacles. And then to anyone who feels this slug, it's going to feel like they're touching an anemone, and can be quite painful and not tasty at all. Oh my goodness, there's such crab drama happening over here. Crabs are crabby. I don't know if you knew that. A little kelp crab squabble going on. That one over there is for sure a male, and it looked like perhaps a female he was tangling with a little bit. But yeah, back to our slug. If I get too close to the water, my service will cut out, but I can get kind of close. Here, I can actually, if I'm really gentle, I can actually move this slug so that we can actually view it. So, yep, shaggy mouse nudibranch. A really, really gorgeous individual here. With my hand for some scale. Excuse all the scuzz. I've been using my hands to balance on the rocks. And this does not hurt this particular nudibranch, although in general, they're so soft-bodied, you really don't want to touch them. Because you can poke right through them. I can't feel this animal at all in my hand. I only know it's here because my eyes are telling me. So we can let it crawl on the rock. Probably better than drifting away on the top surface, although maybe that's what it wanted. I suppose if that's what it wants, it'll go back and continue doing that. Nature's gonna nature. But yeah, you can see those rhinophores coming out, those sensory organs that are kind of like antenna along their top surface. So cool. Great view of these leather stars too, and kelp crabs. A lot of things in the sea are going to be red, which seems like that's not a very good color for an animal to be. You don't want to attract too much attention, but the red wavelength of light gets filtered out. Oh no! There's crab on crab violence over here. We have a red rock crab, really, really, probably the crabbiest crab species that you could ever come across. They have huge pinchers. They can snap a pencil with those pinchers, and it's an animal I don't tangle with very often, going after what I think is that same northern kelp crab. All right, I'm gonna go that way. See if I can show you guys a little bit more. The tide is coming in. All right, don't step on that rock, not sturdy. I broke my first rule of beach going, which is never stand on only one leg when you're on unsturdy surfaces. It's always a good idea to keep both legs on the ground at the same time if you can. Oh, there's some moon glow anemones up in here. Another very cool species that likes swift currents. They're going to be anchored down to a rock several inches beneath the surface. Oh, and here's what those sea cucumbers look like when they're just dangling, and then there's some that are out with their tentacles all the way extended, capturing as much plankton as they can. More crab squabbles going on. Let me get to a rock that's a little sturdier that I can stand on and show you some of these cool things. So now we're getting to some other species. We've got a beautiful ochre sea star down there, that purple one, and same across the way on the piling there. Pilings attract a lot of life because they're big and they're permanent and they're hard structures. So lots of encrusting organisms are able to live here. So we've got these aggregating anemones, these big green guys that are kind of covering the whole thing. There are some giant barnacles in there as well. And then everything else kind of lives in and around and in between. All right, I have to be so careful right here. It's very slippery. But more leather stars, more sea cucumbers. I'm able to pick out a few hermit crabs and things with my eyes that probably the camera is going to have a hard time picking up. But these giant barnacles are here. This is the world's largest barnacle species. They get about as big as your fist. And barnacles are related to crabs and shrimp. So they're crustaceans, which surprises a lot of people because they see the hard calcareous shell and assume that they must be mollusks related to clams or oysters. But they are arthropods. They have the jointed feet that's characteristic of that phylum. And so cool. All right. Oh, hey, here we go. We got another case of scavenging. A leather star eating a kelp crab arm, probably one that got lost in a squabble with these crabs that are quite crabby. And you can see there's so many of them kind of clustered on the bottom of these pilings. As the tide comes back in, they'll climb up and spread out and won't be quite so on top of one another. Okay, how am I going to do this? Let me see if I can. We made it. So you can tell that this area gets a lot of current, not only because of just the geography of the area. This is sort of a narrower area. It's generally where you're going to build bridges. If you have to cross large spans of water, you want to do it in the right spot where it's going to be cost effective. And so the narrower channels tend to be that, but that is going to concentrate the flow of water. And then the other way that I know that there's a good amount of current, even right now at slack tide, before the current's really ripping, is because of all of this shell debris, what we call barnacle hash. This is all broken bits of barnacle shells. And that happens when you have barnacles on rocks, and then those rocks get turned and tumbled and smashed and leaves their little shells behind. We have both the giant barnacles and then all of these rocks, all these little bumps on here are going to be barnacles as well. Barnacles get a bad rap because if you've ever been to the beach and you've lost your footing, taking a misstep, they often will scratch you. And almost always those cuts get infected. So a lot of people think barnacles are really particularly malicious. They're out to get you. They're not. They're just doing their thing. But they're covered in bacteria and they cause quite jagged cuts. I'm pretty positive every time I've ever been scratched by barnacles, I have gotten an infection. Which, I mean, it's fine. That's what an immune system's for. That's your body's response. And luckily, nothing has ever turned out to be too serious. There are a lot of these juvenile leather stars, little tiny guys, which is always such a fun thing to see. It means the next generation is alive and well. Lots of larger ones. And the thing to notice about the sea stars during the low tide, when the tide is out, this water is low right now, but it's going to go all the way up, nearly to the bridge up there. Around here, we have about a 16 to 18 foot tidal swing between high tide and low tide every day. And so our sea stars often get stranded when that happens. And so you can see those leather stars just sort of peeling off the rock. They use water as their blood. They don't really have their own blood. And so when they're out of water, they can't pressurize their water vascular system in order to move. So when they're out of water, they basically are paralyzed and they have to wait there until the tide comes back in. Sometimes they do fall from the rocks, and ideally for the animal, they're going to fall into the water if they can, but they're not choosing to do that, and they basically just are at the whims of gravity at that point. And then when the tide comes back in, they can resume pulling water in through their madreporate, that little off-center spot that you see on their top side. They're going to pull water in through that. It's sometimes called a sieve plate, and then they're going to be able to power their tube feet and continue to suction cup on to the rock and move around. But yes, they often dangle, which is kind of crazy. Lots more of those cucumbers over here. They look a lot prettier in the water than out. Unfortunately, this is, I believe, a dead crab, but I can show you just how cool it is. This is one of the purple shore crabs. They are a species that's really common, especially higher up in the intertidal zone. They're going to be one of the top species, and then as you go lower, you'll run into the green shore crabs, and then like purple mud crabs and black clawed mud crabs as you get lower and lower. But yeah, the key characteristic on this species is that there are no hairs on their legs, so they don't have little bristles, and then the purple polka dots on their pinchers. Say that 3 times fast. But that's kind of a dead giveaway that we're looking at a purple shore crab. All right, this is the time to move away. If you're sensitive about holes, if you have trypophobia, this might not be for you. But we've got some aggregating anemones here. One of my most favorite species of anemone. They're just gorgeous. They have pink tip tentacles on a green column like this. And when the water covers them up, they extend and they look like flowers. And they're called aggregating anemones because they have this unique cloning behavior. So as they get large, they're going to elongate. You can see a couple of them are kind of elongating here. And when that happens, then they'll split in half and basically tear themselves into 2. So then you have 2 anemones sharing the same DNA. They're identical clones of one another. And then they will spread and sort of take over the rocks. And often what you'll see when you look at these is separations between the individual colonies because they fight. And so I can see there's kind of a row right here where there's no anemones. And my guess is that there are 2 separate colonies on either side of that line, which is so weird. And these are a great species. I highly encourage that you touch them if you can, because they do move and they react to touch. You just want to touch them super gently. They don't have any bones or hard parts to protect themselves. Their main means of defense is some stinging cells on their tentacles that are going to discharge on touch. And luckily for us, my fingertips are too thick of skin to feel those stinging cells. However, if I were to touch them with thinner skin, like on my lips, or sometimes my inner wrist is sensitive enough, it does kind of sting and burn. It's uncomfortable. So even if you love anemones, do not go kissing anemones. But yeah, so fun to see them. And imagine like one anemone could have turned into this entire colony, which is so great. Okay, I'm going to turn around and go back down the way I came, if I can, carefully. This is where I'm always very glad to have barnacles on the rocks because they do provide a little bit of traction as long as you're not using it against your skin. Here's another red rock crab. This one is not in this shell any longer. So in order for crabs to grow, they have to molt, they have to shed their skin, and this crab has molted, and we can tell that by opening up this flap here. They will take an enzyme and they'll unzip this seam here and then bring their entire body out. It's like a hand coming out of a glove. All the little bits of their mouth, their tips of their pinchers, everything is going to come out through that back opening. And then they're going to be soft and squishy They will swell with water and be kind of like a marshmallow in texture until their limbs harden up. They're going to pull calcium from the water around them to make a nice hard shell, and that's going to protect them. But for about 3 days or so, they're very vulnerable, which is just cool to see them molt like that. It means our crabs are out there growing. Our animals here in the Northwest don't typically eat their sheds. Yeah, several species of crustaceans have that behavior because they're limited by calcium in their environment and they want to kind of hold on to it. Our crabs don't really have that problem because they are in water that is pretty full of calcium, so they don't have to have the same struggle in regenerating their shell that others do. Several other crabs do, when they molt, they will eat that skin to retain those nutrients. But not our crabs here. Most of our molts are just discarded and nothing happens to them as they break apart and release that calcium back into the water. Yeah, let me know if you have questions. I can try to answer them. Although walking and talking and not falling and looking at my screen are all really difficult things to do all at the same time. But I can do my best. Thank you to anyone who's been answering our comments or answering questions in the comments. I so appreciate you doing that because it's hard to do that. Lots of plankton in the water still. You can kind of see them zooming around. All right, cool. All right, friends. Well, I definitely should be headed back to the office. I need to go grab finish some emails and finish out my week. But since we've gotten some nice low tides, you can expect to see me back. Our daytime low tides are here. And of course, if you want to join us on one of our free beach walks, our beach walk schedule is posted to Facebook and our website, harborwildwatch.org. So if you're local to the Gig Harbor area and you want to come hang out at the beach with me, please do that. And if you're not local, please subscribe on all of our social media channels. We will make an effort to do some education virtually for all of you who can't come in person. And I so appreciate everyone who's liking and sharing and commenting and doing all that fun stuff for us. It's great to have that participation. Oh, people always ask, okay, how come I never show my face? Well, it's because I'm always looking down and making weird things. But let's flip the camera around. Here, that's me. This is why I don't show my face all that often. Yikes. But yeah, hi. I'm a real person. I promise. Let's flip that around. Let's not jump scare everybody. We'll go back to the beautiful view. All right, friends, I'm going to sign off now, but definitely follow along so that you can get notified the next time we go live. It's different every time. We never know what we're going to see. We'll see you later. Oh, there goes a larval fish. You can't see it. It's tiny. It's like a little 1-inch long thing zooming through the water. All right. So without fail, every time I start saying, goodbye, everyone, goodbye, something cool shows up, and then I don't actually leave. So I really do mean it, though, this time. Okay, bye, everybody. Take care.